Hi everyone, good afternoon. Today we are welcoming you for the episode number 7 with very famous personality Mr. Naveen Jindal and Shalu Jindal today. And we have business editor Fatima Madhikaran who will be moderating this session. And this session will be going for 1.5 hours. In first 1 hour we will be having a conversation and then we will take question and answer post that. This talk is hosted by Workplace Trends India. Workplace Trends India is known for having a conversation with leaders and industry leaders, and as well as the influencers in the workplace arena, where people are leading this world with many dimensions and directions. Naveen ji has approx 36,000 employees in his company. Naveen ji is a famous politician, a sports person, and is a big industrialist. We don't need any introduction for him, but he has been involved in CSR activities and as well as society building activities. Naveen ji is Chancellor for OP Jindal Global University. He is President Flag Foundation, and he is doing a lot of CSR activities. He's an ex-MP, and Shalu ji is part of his life, and she's managing all the CSR activities, Jindal Foundation, and many other activities, which is helping many lakhs of people, their life, building their social environment, and helping the society in a big way. Fatma, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tushar. First of all, it's wonderful to see you again, and it's nice to be working with your platform once again. I think the last time was in November. Really grateful for this opportunity to have both Naveen and Shalu join us for this conversation. I think one of the greatest things about having both of you together on this chat is going to be really about the fact that you have witnessed so much in terms of economic cycles, in terms of any kind of transitions you've also made, your own journey. So it's really a great value for all of us and the people who are joining in on this conversation to get your perspective. I'm going to start by asking Shalu actually, how she would describe the new normal that you're seeing around you. And obviously, Naveen, I'd love for you to come in as well, but let me start with Shalu today.
Hi Fatima, thank you so much for joining us today. So I would say that the 40-day lockdown, which has now been extended, has been a bit challenging for me because we're also used to this faster pace of life. But having said that, I also think that we at this webinar today are talking from a very privileged perspective because there are so many people out there who are struggling to make their ends meet. So on behalf of the JSPL Foundation, we are trying our best to help in whichever way we can. So we are equipping the hospitals in all our townships with necessary equipment to fight COVID, as well as distributing and manufacturing, masks and sanitizers and so forth. This lockdown period has also actually enabled me to reflect and introspect a lot about me, myself, and the life that I have been leading till now. And it's also kind of made me more connected to my spiritual side through yoga, dance, puja, meditation, and of course, family time.
And Naveen, I want to, that's one of the excellent answers there. What do you have to say in terms of the new normal that we're witnessing?
Well, slowly and, you start to get used to it. Okay, initially you just feel very strange that, you're locked up in your house, you're not able to go out. But then, like Shalu said, you also get used to it. And then you also start to count your own blessings. You start to count that how fortunate you are, that, you are in the comfort of your house and you have everything, you have no shortage of food and everything. Whereas there are millions of people who are really struggling at this time. And it has been a very good learning experience also. We are now using technology, using video conferencing. Like we've not done webinars like this. So I've attended dozens of webinars. So one realizes that in any kind of situation, one can be productive. One has to keep oneself motivated. You have to keep yourself positive. And in the circumstances, because these are really things out of your control. So with whatever is available, try to do your best. Keep yourself motivated, have the same routine, Like, I exercise every day, twice a day, keeping in touch with your friends, keeping in touch with your family. This has given me an opportunity to spend actually a lot more time with my wife, with my son, with my daughter, which I never ever have. So I try to see this is the positive aspect, but obviously the business has really, because the domestic sales have gone down a lot. It has been very challenging. But then public safety is very, very important. I think these 1.5, 2 months have also got people used to the idea that this is, firstly, we have to take this very seriously. This is a serious health hazard. We have to keep our physical distancing. I don't like the word social distancing, because socially I feel I'm closer to my family now, even a lot of people, my friends. It's really about physical distancing that we have to keep, and also the safety precautions. And the industries that we come from, is like the steel industry, power generation, come under ESMA. ESMA is Essential Services Maintenance Act. So these plants, they work 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, whether it's a national holiday or whatever. So all our plants, they're all in large campuses. So we have the town also in the same campus. 70% of the people living in the townships. So that has been a big blessing that the plants, by God's grace, they are all safe, the people are safe, and they have been continuously producing at a very high level.
Naveen, let me ask you this, and of course, any question I direct towards Naveen is also very much about Shalu weighing in on it as well. One of the big concerns that Shalu, in fact, also highlighted was that we are, we're sitting from a privileged position at the moment. There are people who've been sort of really caught in a bad place when it comes to how things have happened. What is the sort of message you think people who are somewhat, I would say not marginalized, but they perhaps do not have the comforts of, being as safe as we are? How do you think a situation like that should be managed in terms of retaining a workforce that will probably take some time to go back? At the same time, there are some real concerns about health, safety, as well as economic survival.
Of course, there are serious concerns. See, firstly, we are such a large country, and all over every place has its own challenges. So we have to see that, around us. I mean, I can't take care of everyone, okay? Or you can't take care of everyone. So, but around us, in our areas of the circle of influence, whatever good we can. So we must do that. So wherever our plants are, we are ensuring that around our plants, nobody goes hungry. We are able to take care. We are able to provide them medical facilities. So everyone has to contribute to this effort. Government is trying to do a lot, but then we are all part of the government. We are all part of the society. So everyone has to make their effort. But I do feel that economic activity must start, because at the workplace, people are a lot more disciplined. So with all the guidelines that government keeps coming out, state government, central government from time to time, you should follow them in letter and spirit and start the economic engine of the country, because it's very important. And I have seen that when people are, sometimes, so you see or on television, people, if they are not working, it's not that they don't come close to each other. Sometimes people become carefree, they become careless, and they do all that. So in fact, when they keep going to workplace, they have to be they will be wearing protective masks, face masks and PPEs, and be working. So I feel we have to now get back into working in a safe manner.
I kind of agree with Naveen that economic activity must start, because there's so many people out there who are struggling right now to make ends meet. But at the same time, I feel that jaan hai to jahan hai, So human life is the most important thing, and we have to prioritize that even over economic activity if required. But it will be great if we can, create a balance where, both human life and economic activity can be taken into account importantly.
Tell me something. You have a son and a daughter, and they're very much part of this. You know, I would think they would be in their early 20s. Of course, both of you look like you're so young yourself. But what are kids talking about these days in terms of how they sort of see this change that's coming in terms of being part of the sort of economic workforce? What are your kids saying these days, and what are they doing?
I think we all think differently. Like, my daughter who's studying in the US, who's here, she's not liking it. She's not liking doing classes online. She would rather be on campus and doing the classes rather than doing them online, because now it's just pass or fail. The grades, they don't matter now. She's not happy with that because she would otherwise work very hard to earn better grades. So she's not happy. On the other hand, my son, who has started to work the last couple of years, so he loves working from home. He said that, Papa, I think I'm more productive working from home. I can do it at my own pace. My mind works better. I'm able to follow up things more. So, each and every person has their own way, how they react to something, what situation they are in. But I guess, we just try to make the most of the situation.
I think I've had these conversations with my kids, and also, the children, like my kids' friends. So I think all of them are very concerned actually, because obviously this is the first in our lifetime as well as in theirs. And they are much younger than us. So what they think is that it's very important that we must learn from this experience and be better equipped to handle another crisis like a coronavirus again, because all scientists are saying that it is going to happen again. It is inevitable. So we must be better equipped, to handle something like this, a pandemic, the next time around, which I think the younger generation is very, very concerned about, like what every country's government is doing about it, or what as a world together we are doing about it.
So, as a family and as a very sort of closely knit family, how have you been sort of instilling what you yourself are also known for, which is, you're both known to be, disciplined people. You, of course, are also spiritual to say. Tell us a little bit more about that aspect of your personality as well, which I think has translated across various ways. But Shalu, tell me a little bit about this, the sort of transformations you've gone through.
So the one thing that, as a family, I've been trying to inculcate in my children especially is gratitude. So I kind of got a gratitude jar for all four of us with chits. And the thing is that you have to write something that you're grateful for every day and put it in the jar. And after a few weeks, in the near future, we open the jar and we share with each other, what we wrote. So the last 2 weeks I've been, following this, and it's actually made me realize that writing or actualizing something that you're really grateful for every day actually uplifts your mood, as well as brings positivity in your life in a very big way. So I think as a family, this is what we are trying to practice right now. And I'm sure Naveen, from his perspective, can also talk a lot about, business and how he and my son share a really great relationship when it comes to, working together. So
a lot of time you're just sharing the same screen and doing, all these video conferencing. So it's quite nice. You get to learn more about each other, and like she said, to be aware, because a lot of time we take things for granted. But actually, if we really start to list down things that we are grateful for, then we realize that actually we may be amongst the luckiest people in the world. That if we are safe, if everyone, loved ones are safe, we have enough to eat. So, and you realize that you only need basics to be happy. Otherwise there is no limit to one's wants. But so we have to be also realize that if we have the basics, and to keep yourself happy and motivated, keep a routine, look after yourself, what you put inside your body, how you treat your body, because I definitely feel our body is our temple. And nobody else is going to take care of it. So I have tried to use a lot of this time, in trying to work out, sometimes even twice a day and everything. So I feel I'm fitter now, and just try to making the most of it.
So, there's another value, which is the value of endurance, which means that you face any, inconvenience in your life cheerfully. So that's something I've recently started talking about as well, with my daughter especially. And it's great, when you talk to them about these values. I mean, they know about it, but they've not had a chance to practice it, on themselves or in their lives. So now they do actually have, they can learn so much from this.
Let's talk about the fact that that you're obviously both very positive people, and you've talked about gratitude, you've talked about discipline, you've talked about valuing what you have. But Naveen, what is the sort of answer you would give to someone who's an entrepreneur right now? Because there is severe cause for concern. I feel especially those businesses that have been leveraged, or else they have actually sort of taken on some kind of scenario whereby they weren't expecting such a huge disruption. Those guys are really worried. So what would you really tell people, say, who are entrepreneurs at the moment, or else people who are concerned that they're not really going to be seeing a business cycle for a while? What do you really have to say to people like that?
Okay, Fatima, firstly, there are no easy answers. So, everyone is in their own special situation. But when you use the word entrepreneur, entrepreneurs are very entrepreneurial, right? So in any situation, they try to see the silver lining in the dark cloud, right? So obviously, this is the time they must conserve cash. They must keep themselves motivated. They must keep their teams motivated, and they must share, because a lot of times, I may have a problem, but when I share about the business, but when I share that issue with everyone, with my team, somebody comes up with a solution. So, and then we also have to accept there are certain things we can do, which is within our power, certain things we cannot do. But at this moment, when the whole world is suffering from this pandemic, what I have seen and I have observed, whether you go to the government, whether you go to anybody, everyone seems to be a lot more helpful. People realize that yes, there is a genuine concern, there is a genuine issues. So they are a lot more forthcoming, they're a lot more helpful. So I think this kind of that everyone is working with a spirit of cooperative endeavor, which I feel is very important. So we have to be positive, we have to be optimistic, keep on working, and I'm sure this too shall pass.
What does the word leadership mean to you? Shalu, in fact, I want to ask you, leadership, what does it actually mean? Because I think our session is actually, the name is also, leadership, power and strength in a crisis. So what should leadership really be about?
I think leadership is about compassion. It's about being empathetic towards your fellow beings and people who are working under you, who are with you, in your team. So for me, that's what leadership is all about.
And how does that translate when it comes to managing a crisis? I mean, you've talked about it. You've talked about, keeping people motivated, staying connected with them. But realistically, how does it actually work? Because you have a lot of people who work under your companies. 36,000 was the figure that was given to me. But there's a lot of things to be managed there. So how are you developing leaders within your teams also?
So firstly, I like to say leadership for me is leading, leading from the front. Okay, you cannot be a leader and if you do not lead by example. So firstly, you have to lead by example. And secondly, it's just like, if you have surrounded yourself and your team is also positive. So a lot of times it does happen that maybe I'm not so optimistic about something, but other people in the team are. So at that time, I take a back seat and somebody who's more positive, I let them take the lead. So that's how, because, a one person cannot be optimistic all the time or lead all the time or be, good in all circumstances. But when you're talking about an organization, and if you have a which is positive and optimistic, then you see when there's a saying, when it gets dark, stars come out. At this time, you realize there's so many people who contribute so much more at these times of crisis. So I just feel that we got to continue to do our best, and I'm sure that this, and India has compared to many countries, Indian government has handled the situation quite well at a huge economic cost. But like Shalu said, "Jaan hai to jahan hai." So it's important to keep ourselves safe, keep our fellow Indians safe, and we will, because if this is the new normal, we have to learn to live with this adversity and continue to perform and be productive.
So many have sort of asked, and I keep going back to the sort of economic comparatives here. One of the questions that is always thrown at me is, how is this so different from 2008? Okay, because 2008, of course, is still fresh in many people's memories in terms of financial crisis. I have a different set of answers for it, but what are your sort of answers to questions like that? That how is this really particularly going to be historical, and what is it that you'll probably have to say about it in retrospect? When business is back to normal, whenever that is, I have no idea.
I think it's completely different than 2008 in terms of magnitude. Maybe, I don't know, it's 10 times worse, or maybe 100 times worse. 2008, say like our company at that time, we never experienced it. Say India did not get much affected by 2008, because India at that time the economy was booming and we were doing very well. But this pandemic is like, it's worldwide, right? I mean, everywhere, every country is affected adversely. So I think this is much worse. And what this disruption in the economic activity, maybe there are some companies, some industries, they'll never be able to come out of this. Because a lot of times, if somebody is struggling, as sometimes they just change forever. So it is going to be very harsh for a lot of businesses. And I think we all know what those businesses are. So things will change. So at this time, we also need to reinvent ourselves. We need to innovate, we need to reinvent ourselves, we need to see how to bring the costs down, what are the opportunities, what we need to stay alive in business. Stay alive in business. So we need to be seeing, and when we think, when there is a need, we definitely, a lot of times we do rise to the occasion to answer to the needs. I'm sure we will do that, and we will come out stronger out of this crisis.
So, Fatima, I think that, this crisis, this pandemic is actually a public health crisis. And in a way, it's actually brought the human race together, because whether you're living in the US or Europe or India or China, we're all facing this pandemic together. So now, everybody is prioritizing their health as well as others' health. So in that sense, the human race has come together because of this. Yeah.
Shalu, you talk about public health. I think one of the other conversations that I'm witnessing is that it's almost that it was taken for granted earlier. The idea of public health was not, a conversation that was happening again and again in terms of how the economy would suffer. There seemed to be a sort of distinction between business and public health. What do you have to say about that, Naveen, in terms of how important public health is and how much it has come into the forefront of any sane economy?
So public health, I think we realize now is a lot more important than the kind of importance it has been getting in the past. We realize healthy citizens are an economic asset. And then the investment, the kind of investment that has to go into public health, especially government institute, has to be also a lot more. Because now the burden of this pandemic, this coronavirus, is mostly being handled by the government hospitals. It's not by the private hospitals. So we feel that government also has to, government has to continue to invest in this sector, and we have to be a lot more, we have to spend a lot more in public health and in awareness and in better civic sense, better hygienic conditions. So I think it's a subject which needs a lot more attention from the government, from the society, from everyone really.
Like in a country of, with respect to India, in a country of 1.3 billion population, the spending on public health is only around 1.5%, which is very less. So I think the government has to prioritize, public health, and so that in the future, if something like this comes up, we have to be better prepared and prioritize human life above everything else.
So, do you think there are some unique opportunities for India at this stage in terms of what can be done and how we can perhaps use this entire experience? Naveen, what do you think are opportunities in the country at the moment?
See, opportunities again in different industries, different areas. We all have to figure out, what the opportunities are. It's difficult for me to say. Like I can talk about our industry. Say in terms of power generation, like now suddenly we see that the energy prices have crashed. Oil prices have crashed, coal prices have crashed. So accordingly, we need to change our strategies as to which fuel we use, how we use it to bring down our costs. So similarly in steel making, we are all the time we are working. So many opportunities are coming, and obviously when the market is not there. Like we used to be selling 85% of what we produce domestically, but we found out that there is no domestic market. The domestic sales were less than 5%, so we had to export more than 90%. So suddenly you realize that how important logistics are, how important the ports are, and sometimes we do not pay so much of attention to it. So in certain ways, we just can't be dependent on the domestic market. So the market has to be, international. So we have to see how to be able to survive during these crises. And I'm sure, but I think I feel that the worst is over, and now the gradual from tomorrow. Not tomorrow, day after, from the 4th, from Monday, gradual opening up of the economy will start in the green zones, then in the orange zones, and we will learn too. So I think the worst is behind us. Now the growth rate has also slowed down. So the lockdown has achieved its objective. So now we need to restart the economic engine.
So speaking of global demand, how do you think China is going to come out of all of this? Where do you see China in a few years?
I don't know. Chinese, they're very hardworking. They're very versatile. They have a great work culture. Obviously, I'm not happy that this virus has come from China, and they took long to kind of warn the world about it. And if they did it faster, then maybe the suffering world over would have been much less. But I have to give it to them that China, whatever they do, their cities, and a lot of times when we are exporting now steel to China. So they kind of come out of this quite fast. The way they construct, whether they're constructing a building or a hospital or a steel plant, they do it much faster, much better than us. So we can't write off China, whether we like it or not. They're because of their strength, because of their hard work. So I'm sure that they will come up, but obviously a lot of countries, a lot of people, in millions are going to be very unhappy with what has happened. So that being there, but we can't write them off either.
I think to write off China is probably not possible at all. But what I actually want to get, and both of your insights on this is, the economic power that China has been known for, and the way we're also looking at how world order is changing. How do you sort of look at all of this? What are the kids saying about the way things are changing?
Shall you want to answer that?
I don't think the kids have had any say regarding, the world, how it's changing, in the sense that, we're all going through this shock together, right? So we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Although, there are chances of a vaccine being developed in the near future, very soon, which is a very positive note. But at the same time, even a developed country like America or developing countries like India and China, we're actually on the same, platform when it comes to this pandemic, because everybody's suffering because of this. It's not just, restricted to one country, or just 2-3 countries.
Sure.
So in that sense, I think as a human race, we all have to come together, irrespective of where the virus came from. I also have another point of view on that. It's a bit pessimistic, but I sometimes feel that maybe it's nature's way of taking revenge, upon humans, because we have caused so much destruction. Like since the lockdown has happened, you see the air pollution has reduced so much, and the animals are actually coming out, there are dolphins in the Arabian Sea, then we have these flamingos in this lake near Mumbai. The birds are chirping more, in my house when I, walk outside in the evening, I can see different breeds of birds which I had never witnessed before. So, we have to learn to coexist, with all the species on this planet. So probably this is a wake-up call. So my kids are actually talking about learning from this experience. They're saying, we don't want to do the same mistakes that you as parents did when it came to treating Mother Earth. So they are more conscientious, and I'm sure they'll take the right steps. They will try to work against global warming. They will try to, do whatever they can to make sure that even if this pandemic, something like this comes again, we'll be better equipped to handle it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the conversations, whether you're talking about business or you're talking about reinvention, is about how will normal be. What one just feels, at least I think most people seem to think that it's a much cleaner earth at the moment. It's, things have slowed down for certain people in a way that it's actually helped them realize a lot. You both talked about reinvention, right? Reinvention and staying relevant. What do you mean by that, Naveen? And what does reinvention or staying relevant really mean to you?
Okay, so I'm talking in context of our industry, say steel, power generation. So, you have to, in the sense, you have to see, that whatever the way you used to do business, now it's not going to remain the same. Earlier, everything like, we would travel, if you had one meeting, somebody would come from Bombay to do one 10-minute meeting with you. So, people just, or I would go long distances just for a half an hour meeting or something. And so a lot of those meetings actually just can be done by video conferencing. It's so much easier. So that's what I mean by reinventing. People could be, why have so much of real estate? Why have such large offices? Everybody coming to work to the offices. A lot of people actually could be contributing from home, from their flexible hours. So in that sense, we will be putting less pressure, less traffic on the roads, less CO2 emissions. So less, so everywhere we can learn to be a lot more efficient, I would say, and a lot more. We can conserve energy, and so I think that things are going to change for the better. And I'm an optimist. So I do feel that all this has shown us ways, otherwise which we were not willing to see. And what Shalu said, this is nature getting back. So obviously, everybody has appreciated, even the Ganga, we spent thousands of crores on it, and now suddenly Ganga is much cleaner. But that's also because, this is not the way to clean up Ganga or the environment. So I feel that economic activity and environment have to coexist. So industry or economic activity has to be done in an environment-friendly manner. So whatever things were not happening right, we must put them right. We owe it to our children, we owe it to everyone else that we do things in a sustainable manner, in an environment-friendly manner. And I think all these things are going to happen.
Fatima, I have a different take on this. Like, I agree with Naveen, whatever is said, that technology has actually helped a lot in ourselves in this period. So as a creative artist, because I'm a dancer, I've actually realized that, the technology even through creative arts, has connected the whole world. Like I've been participating in these online dance performances, live, which people are doing sitting at home. They've cleared a space in their home and they're performing, and it's being telecast live on Zoom or, on a webinar, and everybody can watch it at the same time all over the world. So I think in that sense, it's actually, done a lot to popularize different genres of creative arts from all over the world, including India. At the same time, I also feel that, along with reinventing, one must never forget, from this experience. Like for me, a very important takeaway from this experience is that, okay, fine, no matter what technology can do, but there is absolutely no substitute for pure human contact. Because a simple act of just giving a hug, or meeting your family and friends, going for a walk to Lodi Garden, or even going for a movie. We must remember that when things go back to normal, like the way they were in the past, we must appreciate these small things, these little pleasures of life much more, and not take them for granted.
So emerge out of this as a better person. Let's talk a little bit about the spiritual journey that you've had, both of you, I would say. But Shalu, tell us a little bit more about that, how it's affected you, and also how long you've actually been following it as a couple.
I think spirituality has different connotations for many people. So for me, I would say that it's taught me a lot of values of how to live my life. And we, kind of follow Swami Parthasarathy ji from the Vedanta Academy, which is in Lonavala. So, his teachings have really helped both me and Naveen to face many challenges in our lives, and also helped us in our spiritual growth. So he says that, there is the act of divinity in everything that's happening around us. We all know that, So we are just very limited and a spoke in the wheel of life. So, we have to think like that and surrender with complete faith to this divinity, which is actually doing everything through us. And at the same time, we also have to remember the law of karma, which is cause and effect. So whatever action we do with honesty, integrity, so we'll get the same result back. But if our action is not honest, or it's not dedicated to, a specific higher goal, then probably the result also will not be as what we desired. And I also believe that, any action which is performed dedicated to a certain goal becomes an act of worship. Like for Naveen, when I see him, working in his steel plants, it's actually an act of worship for him, because he's so dedicated, his team is so dedicated. So when you're doing everything as an act of worship, the result is going to be good. I mean, this is what, I have learned from, Naveen, as well as, from Swamiji. Yeah.
I think that's it. It's something to just to practice and not to speak about.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would be a Swami myself. So just keep it simple. Just do your job and leave the rest to God, because we don't control the results. I see so many times, say while playing polo, you hit the ball perfectly towards you, and it just goes out. Or sometimes you just hit it and it goes in. So it's like, you can just do your act. The result is not in your hands. And when you believe in that, it is less pressure on yourself. And you just continue to try to do the right things. And, hopefully, things will happen. You just do your bit.
So have you always, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to ask you, have you always been on the same page when it comes to these kind of, issues, whether it's spirituality or, have you always been on the same page, or did you were you in different phases at different times in life, or how did all of this come about?
The same page, a lot of things, we are on a different page. So we have our arguments, we have our fights, and, we are just like any normal couple. And we enjoy everything.
Yeah, but this one thing I've learned from Naveen is that, he's very hardworking. So he inspires me to work hard, in whatever I do. And I also believe that, there is no substitute for hard work. The probability of success is so much more if you work hard. So, I mean, God helps those who help themselves. So, yes, there is an act of divinity, in whatever we are doing, but we have to do the hard work.
So I really believe that the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying there in terms of hard work.
It has to be also in the right direction. It has to be smart. So we just, we've been a great believer of this book called The One Thing, and we had a webinar recently. So we're trying to, every person in the company that they prioritize. So a lot of time we have like a big to-do list. So that's not important to to-do list. Have a success list. Maybe there are 20 things we want to do, but out of those 20 things, maybe there are only 5 things which are really important. So a lot of times we are focusing on so many things that, we can't really focus. So we have to focus and give time and attention to the most important things. So that 80-20 principle, that where 20% of the things get you the 80% result. So this is very important. That's a journey that, we have been trying to go through in our company, in the entire group, and myself also. A lot of times you do things, but you're just doing things which do not have much of an impact. And the things that have the most impact, you have no time for those. So it's very important to consciously figure out what those things are and actually focus on the most important things and block time for that, because that is what really matters.
So I want to probe a little further, because the minute you start telling me about how to create efficiency, my ears light up again. Tell me a little bit more about what you're saying about this, 80-20 formula, as well as how you build your day. What are the typical kind of things you think are very important in terms of keeping it together, as a leader as well as a business person? Shalu, all questions for you as well. Tell me a little bit more about this thing about productivity.
So one is to have a routine. If you have a routine, you sleep at the right time, you wake up at the right time, you exercise. So one is to follow your routine. I think that to me is very important. And then to have, to know clearly your path, that these are the things that I'm going to do. So I have my goal, then I have my priorities, then I have my strategies to achieve those priorities. Then I say for tomorrow, I have already planned that, okay, these are the things I'm going to follow up on. I know that today I'm going to be doing this seminar. After this, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be reviewing this. And a lot of those things which I'm not able to accomplish, I take them tomorrow. And then I also review what are most important things. So if you continue to do that, and the most important thing is, I think, in whatever circumstances we are, whatever we are doing, we have to be happy. Because that's a decision that you make. Because a lot of times, we get in the habit of complaining. Like what Shalu said earlier, we have to learn to be grateful. Learn to be thankful, grateful for all the things, all the blessings that we have in our lives. Obviously, there are so many more things that we want. We keep on working towards them. But very important to be grateful about things that we have. And then if we do it in a planned way, in a systematic way, I think we get a lot better results. So anybody, I would recommend this book. I think it's by Keller and Jay. The One Thing. It's a very small, short book, and it starts off by that if you chase 2 rabbits, you catch neither one, which makes so much sense. So that helped me. At the same time, there was a time when I was a member of parliament with more than 2 million people in my constituency. More than my time going into the parliament and related activities. I was running business. I was having my own polo team, and I was on the Indian shooting team. So I could do well, but never could be number one in either of the things. So you realize that you can't be doing everything. So you have to be focused. You have to realize what is that one thing that's important to you, and focus on that. So to achieve success. I think that's very, very important. So this is a very simple book. If you've not read it, I would love to gift that to you.
Okay. Interesting. You were doing a lot, and I think you did a lot of them very, very well. I just want to thank both of you. I'm Tushar. I'm actually going to stop being so selfish and just keep Shalu and Naveen to myself. I can see that there are many, many questions that are coming in, and I think your audience has been. First of all, it's been a pleasure talking to both of you. Thank you for this conversation.
Fatima.
Thank you.
And thank you for a very, very kind introduction before Fatima. I didn't get a chance to thank you.
Thank you. And Tushar, I'm going to hand it to you because I think our audience really is very excited about asking certain questions. And I think you must be as well. Go ahead. Back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Fatima, for a very interactive conversation. Naveenji and Shalu, I would like to just say thanks to to coming over this show. I remember when I visited your plant with you 1.5 years back, and Naveen, you told about many. I think in our life this is first COVID. In your life, there are many COVIDs you have already faced. Sometimes 25,000 crores are lost. Sometimes 50,000 crores are lost. Sometimes this whole block is blocked. Some political pressure. So like you are a sport person. I understand that the spirit is there, but I mean, how you manage such adversity? I'm sure that you have answered in many ways, but there are a lot of business school students are also in the conversation. I would like to just know that what is the leadership style where you see so many adversities, so many losses going up and down. How you manage that?
So one is, you see, I don't know. One is, naturally. Naturally it comes to you to handle crisis and to not give up. The spirit of not giving up under any circumstances. When I was in the US, they used to use a term, just hang on. We see in the movies, we see so many places, people who just hang on, they saying like never say die attitude, You continue at some things turn around, and then to surround yourself with people. You must know who to go to, who to speak to, whether in the family, whether you're speaking to your brother or son or mother. That who's going to be positive, who's going to guide you, who's going to support, friends who are going to support you. So if you have that kind of a circle around you, and then try to do the right thing. If you know that your own conscience is clear, and that these are certain things that happen to you, I mean that you don't deserve it, and then you believe in God, so that gives you the strength. You believe in God. You're doing the right things. You're not hurting anybody. You know that things will happen, and this is like a testing time. And you continue to keep yourself happy, enjoy every moment, and I don't know. It's just and believe that this too shall pass. So whether I've seen really good times, they also pass away, and very bad times, they also pass away. So it's like not to get too excited, too happy, not to get too sad. So always try to try to be happy at all times and continue to do your best. So I don't know how else to explain this more to you.
So I think what I understood from your conversation is I think family, near and dear people, are very important. I think your values and roots help you to face these situations. So Shalu, do you have something to say that how much percentage of contribution comes from you to make him so strong?
Let me say that, Tushar. So the family is very, very important. Family is your biggest strength. I get a lot of inspiration, a lot of strength from Shalu. She is all the time, in terms of crisis, that your family is there with you. And when the crisis strikes, your closest family, your closest friends only stay with you. Otherwise, you may know hundreds of people, but when it really counts, you can count only on very few people. And those people, you can't take it for granted. You have to respect them. You have to love them, and it's just they also naturally they want to help you. So that's very important relation within the family or friends, and one must nurture that.
Thank you. Shalu, you want to say something?
I just want to say that in any good relationship, I personally believe that respect is more important than love. So, for me, I respect Naveen so much as a human being. So, whichever kind of times we face together, whether it's good times or bad times, because I respect him so much for his values, his integrity, his dedication to goals in his life, that, for me to be with him during that tough time comes very naturally. Because I know this too shall pass. So,
Thank you, Tushar. This is the first time she's telling me all this. So,
Naveen, I'm just thinking, listening this conversation, she will start respecting me also.
I'm surprised myself.
Open marriage to all the wives, they should also, respect their husband, very well. I think she is listening to me. But one thing very important, Naveen, like when I spend a full day with you in plant, and we have seen that you have 36,000 people under you working with you. And then I saw that when you are going to the plant, you are connected so well with even supervisors, and they were you were calling them by name. And I've seen you so humble that after so much of role responsibility, how can you manage that humanity? How you manage that kind of connection and relationships?
So it just firstly, I just really enjoy it. I really enjoy what I do. I really enjoy going to the steel plants, meeting people. I do have to change my style though. I used to shake hands with hundreds, thousands of people in my constituency or the steel plant. I would shake hands with everybody. And now, now we're not going to be doing that, and I'm not going to be encouraging that for some time till we are able to get out of this this pandemic. So I just enjoy that, and I realize how hard they work, and how passionate they are about this work. So I don't know, I just love meeting people, talking to them, and they also, obviously, when I also get a lot of affection from them, a lot of respect from them. So I just try to give it back. And we together have a very like a conducive atmosphere where you work and and really do things which which are quite challenging to do. And when you do that every day with discipline, I know it's just great fun.
Tushar, I think I'd like to add here that both Naveen and I, we've been very fortunate to have parents who have actually given us these values of being compassionate or empathetic, as well as being humble, since we were children. Like my parents, we've all lived very simply, irrespective of whether, we're born into a rich family or not, what we have doesn't matter. It's, what we want to give back. That's what most important. That's what we were taught when we were growing up. At the same time, when I got married to Naveen, I remember his father, he became an industrialist during his lifetime. He was not born with a silver spoon. So he was a farmer. From being a farmer, he created the steel industry that his sons are now looking after. So he was such a grounded person. He was so humble. Even my mother-in-law, she's so humble. My own mom is so humble as well. So I think these things children emulate, from the parents when you're growing up. And then it becomes part of your DNA, part of your nature.
And see, a lot of these things come naturally. And now, say when I see my son, coming back from the US, everybody in India, we call say the people call me, like you tell me Naveen ji, or somebody calls me Chairman sir or whatever. So Venki said, even they would call him, Venki ji or Mr. Jindal. He says, no, just call me Venki. So I feel that the younger generation, they are even better than us. So I think we have to be very excited and very hopeful that the younger generation, and I'm speaking all across, I think our children and all of us, our children are much smarter and much better persons, because also when you've not faced any challenges, you are generally a better person. Also, when you are faced with a lot of challenges, the challenges can also make you harsher, can also make you tougher. So, when your paradigm of the world is not a safe place. Like now, when you meet people, you think, oh, this person, I hope, is he okay or is he having the virus, like that, right? When your world is a safe place, then So I think our children, because they've had things much easier. So I think it's easier for them to be nicer, kinder also to everyone. So I think we are heading towards a better world, a better place. And the children, I think, are a lot more kinder than you compare them to the older generation. And that's something that I've experienced now.
Naveen, thank you for I think inspiring us. There are a lot of companies, like small companies, those who are not even having like 1% of the total manpower which you have. They are really worried that how they fight in this COVID situation. How will they pay to their employees? How will they manage the kind of expenses which is coming on their head? And I think one which I got from you when I spoke to you many times, and I spent I think full day with you. When the adversities are there, but how you manage those adversities is very important. I have many guests in the in the conversation now. Abhishek Mehta has joined from Singapore. Abhishek, would you like to you would like to ask anything to Naveen?
Yeah, thank you, Tushar, and thank you, Fatima, for being a great moderator. So my question to Naveen is, so one of the trend, Naveen, we are seeing, especially like I am working in a financial technology, the COVID has pretty much grounded everybody in working from home. So there is pretty much 95% of my peers across the industry, technology and financial services are working from home. So as we prepare for post-COVID situation, I would like to know what's your view in terms of do you think it's a new normal? More so as we are seeing new news coming out from different groups where technology firms believe that 75% of workforce would continue to work from home post-COVID, including the banks which are now revisiting the whole real estate strategy, whether should they renew their leases and stuff. So what's your view in terms of post-COVID era where work from home is a new normal, and how does it impact your industry? That's kind of the first question. The second question is, because as you just shared about your personal style where you are so close to everybody in your employees, how do you see as a leader can still connect to their employees in working from home world? Can still be so connected to their employee force and be relevant?
Okay, so firstly, I feel that yes, things I think will change forever. And a lot of people would not need to go to the office. A lot of people could work and contribute from home, and I don't see that as in a negative way. I think that's in a positive way. So there will be less pressure on the roads, on traffic. There's not going to be as much traffic, world over. And as far as being connected is concerned, whether to your friends or family or workers or staff or you're talking. I think you can be more connected. Like a lot of people I'm seeing more now than I used to before. So that's why I don't like the term social distancing. It is just really physical distancing. Maybe if this crisis was not there, we would not get to meet. So, and we realize that actually it's so easy to meet people, just on your WhatsApp call or on FaceTime or whatever, but we don't do it. We all the time insist more than necessary on physical meetings. So I think it is important, but where you already know people, because sometimes of course it's important, but where you already know people and for day-to-day work, you don't need to. You can do over technology, you can do over a phone call or an email or a video call. And the way we can just connect so many people in so many parts of the world is absolutely amazing. And now today the technology is there. I think things are going to change forever and things are going to change for the better. So we need not have any apprehensions. I think we have to embrace the changes and use them to go forward.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, Naveen. We have many other guests in the panel. I would like to invite Gopali and Sangeeta ji. Please switch on your camera. Gopali and Sangeeta ji. Yeah. Yeah, please.
Namaskar, Naveen. Namaskar, Shalu.
Namaskar, Gopalji. How are you?
Good. So, thank you so much, Tushar, for giving us this opportunity. So, I really loved your sharing that the gratitude slips idea that you mentioned just now. But I have a very specific question about steel. You just now said that you've been selling your products in the domestic market around 95%. 5% was export. But now you have shifted to 90% export. So how did you do this? How are you able to manage this shift in such a short period of time, especially in terms of logistics and finding new customers? This is one question. And second is regarding China. Like you are exporting your products to China. So China is a major exporter itself. And how come it is importing steel from India now?
Yeah.
Firstly, when sometimes there's no other option left, you see, where to, and if you want to continue to produce, you have to figure out, a market, right? So when we are exporting, obviously you always get much better prices in the domestic market. Either domestically, because of the lockdown, there is no market, then the only way is exports. So we chose that, and exports mean it is a big ocean, and China is only one of the countries. We are also exporting to the US, to Vietnam, to Malaysia. This thing, right? A buyer needs 100 eyes, seller needs none. So wherever we can find orders from, even Europe, so we are supplying steel over there. So obviously there have been constraints in logistics, in the railways, in the ports, because ports also not functioning at 100%. But we've been able to somehow, we have to cope up with these challenges, and we've been working on that. And like you said, China. So I feel Indian steel plants are also very, very efficient. If you produce efficiently, and China also, there must have been disruptions in their production, and the demand seems to be strong. And if they get at an attractive price, because they buy a lot of iron ore from India, so if they could get steel from India at an attractive price, they're buying it, because probably they can buy it cheaper than what they take to make it.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, Gopalji. Avnish.
Namaste, uncle. I was also following your webinar with Papa, and I was just getting a sense that overall, I think yourself and JSPL have been extremely bullish about the steel industry moving forward. So that gives us a lot of faith in a time like this. But why do you think so, sir? Like, why do you think, and how soon do you think there will be this turnaround and we will see an actual bullish nature in this team?
Okay, so beta, I just feel I'm bullish because naturally by nature I'm bullish. so we have to be optimistic, and under any circumstances, you see, steel is not going away, right? Steel, people would still need to build homes. We are a very large country, more than 1.3 billion population. Not everybody has a house, right? So there are a lot of unmet needs, so much of infrastructure that needs to be built. You can't build any house, you can't build any infrastructure without the usage of steel. So the efficient steel producers, people who can produce steel very, very efficiently, or you can produce efficiently anything. I'm sure there's always a market for that. There's always room for an efficient player in every industry.
Sangeeta ji, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
So this one's for Shalu.
Hi, Sangeeta.
Shalu, hi. Such a pleasure hearing you both speak from your hearts. So Shalu, I've known you as a very multifaceted person. You are the best wife I know. You're the best mother, the best dancer, the most spiritual person. And I know you're always on the go, discovering more and more about yourself. So I'd like to know, in this period of lockdown, what is one new trait that you discovered about yourself? I'm sure you must have found 100 more. And secondly, what is it that you people as a family have decided in this new normal to make it as a part of your family thing?
Thank you so much, Sangeeta, for such an epic introduction about me and what all I do. You're too kind. I just want to say that during this pandemic that we've all been facing, and we've all been in a lockdown situation. So the one thing that I've realized about myself is the value of endurance, which is that one can go through any challenge in one's life or any inconvenience that comes in one's life. One has to face it cheerfully. So I've been trying to practice that as much as I can. And the other thing that you asked was, I'm sorry, what did you ask about?
I think this being the new normal, what is one thing that you people have decided to incorporate in your lives as a family?
I think as a family, we've decided to spend more time together because all of us have led really busy lives in the past, So we rarely used to meet except for dinner, sometimes. And now, we are at home all the time, all of us. So we are sitting together. Like Naveen's doing his business calls along with my son Naveen. I'm also in the lounge listening to them. I'm doing my work on my iPad or whatever.
And she keeps making her comments also, which is sometimes irritating, but she keeps on making her comments.
Good advisor with you now.
Yeah.
So we spend more time as a family. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you.
Avnish, thank you, Sangeeta ji. Avnish, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tushar. Apologies for the Wi-Fi. Mr. Jindal, my question is really related to your university in Sonipat, which over the last decade or so has really kind of made strides in education, and obviously its kind of global reputation has kind of gone across India as well. I think what I really wanted to kind of understand from you, what was the key motivator for you to establish that university, number one. Number two, be it education, and you are in a myriad of different businesses, as far as steel, cement, and everything else is concerned, and you've faced a lot of challenges, in the regular industries. How would you compare challenges of establishing and running an educational institution vis-a-vis a typical challenge of running a normal sort of a business in India? And lastly, given the COVID-19 situation, we all are having this interface via the internet. Do you see online and offline being modes of education? Are they here to stay in the long term, or do you think that this is really a passing phase, wherein the educational teaching methodology is going to go back to the way it was just a few months ago? Thanks for the opportunity, Tushar.
Thanks. There are a lot of questions you have asked. So firstly, why we started, we are not in the business of education. So for us, this university is a philanthropic effort. And after my father passed away in 2005, so we wanted to do something in his memory, because whatever we have achieved in our lives, it has all been due to drawing inspiration from his life, from his work. And he always believed, he was a strong advocate of education. He used to always say that the best gift that you can give to anyone is good education. So we wanted to do something in his memory. And that's why we chose Haryana, because Haryana was his Karam Bhumi, his Janam Bhumi. And we started this university. But the credit of the university doing so well, I would like to really give to the faculty of the university. So I'm a chancellor, but so this my initial effort was to, and that time our companies were doing very well, we were making a lot of money. So we wanted to put that money to good use. In the memory of my father, we started this university. But the people who have really made this university what it is the Vice Chancellor, Professor Rajkumar, and hundreds of other professors, who are so committed to the cause of education. They give their heart and soul to the university, to all the students studying there. And what is very important is our students. Our students have made us really proud. And when they go out, they are our ambassadors of the university. So we have tried to, just make good citizens, that we try to have the best faculty, the best facilities, so that, we can contribute to the society. And your question about these online courses have always been, been popular. But I think now, when people have been forced into something, like a lot of us have been forced into doing these kind of interactions, this kind of learning. So when you get used to something, you obviously tend to do it more. You realize its potential. So now, after having realized the potential, because it's sometimes we just take the easy, we are all creatures of habit. We are designed to do a certain way. But now we have been forced to think differently, to work differently, to work from home. So definitely we realize that it is very easy. This can be done. So, and I think this is going to stay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen. We have next question from Rahul Pasari. He is Rahul. Can you come on screen, please? Yeah. Rahul, you are on mute, please. Please give your introduction and then please ask your question, Rahul.
Hi, Naveen sir and Salu madam. Warm good afternoon. My question is in regards to the pellets to Naveen sir. How you are looking forward for the pellet plant exports as well as the iron ore exports to China, sir?
Well, I think right now it's doing well. Even the prices have come down, but we are going to export more pellets than we ever have. Earlier, probably we used to export maybe around 200,000 tons a month. Right now, we targeting more than 400,000 tons a month. So we are more than doubling our exports of pellets. So it's a way to value add, because India does not allow a good quality iron ore to be sold, because obviously we want to do value addition. So to take low grade iron ore fines and to beneficiate them and then make pellets, I feel is a good value addition for Indian iron ore, and we are doing that, and we see that it's going to continue to have a good market.
So one more question.
Rahul, thank you very much.
One more question, sir.
Rahul,
One more question.
We have many questions coming from the audience. Thank you, Naveen. We have only last 10 minutes left. One question commonly which is coming, that a lot of companies from US and different part of the world, like Western world, is being told to come out from China and settle their new bases, and India is on the top radar. What do you say? How you see this opportunity, Naveen?
So, well, I hope and I wish that it happens, that more and more people come to India. So we have our own challenges, and I hope if we can rise to the occasion and welcome them. And so, but also I do feel that all the time we are trying to, welcome new investment, new investors. But there are so many millions of entrepreneurial people in India who already have invested in India. I think it's very important to focus on people who are already invested here, rather than all the time trying to chase new investors. And I'm sure all the entrepreneurs watching this would agree that we have to, the best way to attract investment is to take care of your investors. So if you already take care of your investors, then automatically new people will come in, because people just don't come by inviting. They see that other people who are already invested, if they are doing well, you don't need to invite anybody. People will come automatically.
Yeah, great answer, Naveen. India is now hub of startups. New entrepreneurs are coming because of the entry barriers are very less. If you look at your conventional business versus new startups, what do you see as a change in infrastructure or ecosystem? Like, I'm sure that 10 years before, getting become entrepreneur in India, it was very tough. A new first generation business was not so easy. But today, if you see, there are so many first generation billionaires. There are first generation entrepreneurs, those who are just coming day by day. What kind of environment you foresee in this ecosystem?
Okay, so firstly, like I said, Indians are very entrepreneurial, and the kids today they're very smart. Okay, and there's so many startups. They have so many bright ideas, and obviously as youngsters they get all the encouragement from everybody. So I think India has a good conducive atmosphere to make that happen, and then. To see if somebody who wants to succeed, who is going to succeed, nobody can stop them also. They are unstoppable, right? Even if you try to stop them, they will go and they will find. And today world is one. Anybody who has a good idea, if I do not support them, you will support them. If India doesn't support, somebody else will support. So an idea whose time has come is going to be unstoppable. So I think we have to have that confidence. And the kids today are very confident, and so even if they fail, they rise again to try out something new again. So today technology, technology gives them a great support, I feel, in implementing their ideas.
Shalu, question is to you. I have recently attended one of your event, Rashtriya Swayam Siddhi Samman. You have found out so many people from different part of the country, from Odisha, from Bihar or from Rajasthan, and people those who are not known in the in any landscape right now. How what kind of energy you find in these kind of initiatives? Because out of those people, a lot of people got the Padam Shri also because you given them a space to come to the the limelight, and then after they got the Padam Shri. What kind of energy, what kind of motivation is behind this efforts?
So, Rashtriya Swayamsit Samman is a JSPL Foundation initiative, and the main motive behind is that we must find out people who have actually dedicated their whole lives to give back to society at the grassroots level. So these people have just left their jobs, they have left everything to go and live in villages and do something for the betterment of the community in which they are living. So we have a wonderful team at JSPL Foundation, and we also partnered with the Jindal Global University. So together we found out where these people are, and then we gave them a platform to come to Delhi, and they were awarded for all the work that they were doing. And I think I'm very, very privileged to share with all of you that most of them got Padma Shris after we kind of awarded them with the Rashtriya Swayamsit Samman.
But I would say that they are truly deserving, and if you see what they're doing, what they have done, is very, very inspiring.
Yes.
So it's you really feel that even with very, very meager resources, or without any resources, just the will to serve the humanity. Most of those people, they have just been working to serve the humanity. They've not been working to get any awards or anything,
Yes.
but just to serve the humanity. And so it's really inspiring stories.
So it inspires us as well, when you meet them and get motivated by them.
Thank you, Shalu and Naveen. Just one last question. I would say that second last, hobbies sometimes help us to face the adversity. You are a famous dancer. I have attended a lot of concerts of when I was in Speak Mackey, and Naveen, you are a sports person. Like what kind of in this time where everything is locked, everything is like how your hobbies are helping you to manage this situation. Individually, I would like to get answers from both of you.
So I think this is like a first in my lifetime, this kind of a crisis that we are facing today, and so it's very important at this time especially that we keep our mind occupied. So it's very important to have a good routine in one's life. So personally, if I share my routine with you, get up in the morning and then I do my puja, which is a fixed routine. Then after that, I do my dance practice. Then it's yoga, and then it's lunch. And then after that, a few meetings, maybe on Zoom or something. And then in the evening, I go for a walk just outside my house, just like for an hour or something, and then it's dinner time, and then spending time with the family. So this keeps me very busy, as well as it keeps me positive, because I know that I've spent the whole of my day doing something productive for my health, as well as for my inner growth.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Naveen also has a very fixed routine right now. So
Tushar, for me, my sports, I don't call them hobby because a lot more serious than a hobby. It's like my sport, like especially say polo, riding. It takes up. I do it very seriously, so it does help you build your character, because you face all kinds of horses. Sometimes very challenging. Then sometimes you have your falls, or you have really like experiences where anything could have happened. So it just it just tells you that this is how life is. So you got to just continue, you got to keep doing it. So you realize that, okay, there is a force which is saving you. There is a God that is saving you also, as so many times. So your belief in that, grows stronger. And then whatever you do it boldly. You face the world boldly, you face the situations with courage, and you continue to do your best. You can't be fool. You have to work hard. You have to stay on the horse. You have to work. You have to practice every day, because horses don't care. That you have been feeding it carrots or something is going to be kinder to you. Neither do other teammates. So you have to be there because you deserve to be there. You have to be strong to be there, and continue to work hard, and continue to have the belief in God that, okay, if you do the right thing, then right things will happen to you. Believe in the law of karma, and keep doing, and most importantly, enjoy them. Because if you don't enjoy, if Shalu doesn't enjoy her dance, she can't do it. If I don't enjoy my sports or working out, and when you work out, when you do your exercises, whether it's running or weights or whatever you do, so it also obviously it releases all those happy hormones. You feel stronger, you feel better. Like when I work out, I feel, oh, at least I've done one good thing in a day. Like I said, our body is our temple. We have to take care of it, what we put inside it, how we treat it. So I think it's all very important, to take care of ourselves.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, Shalu. Before I just end up this session, I would like to tell you that 25,000 people are directly live and seeing you on Facebook, LinkedIn, or some other places, and like very, a lot of business leaders, students has come, and I'll just tell you, like a lot of people are asking that, workplace trends is doing, workplaces and what trends and, what is happening in the world, how we are connecting with the leaders and how it is helping. So I just wanted to tell you that, a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders are sitting in this room. They want to know the story, how leaders behave in this kind of crisis, how leaders act and how they engage themselves with the society, with their family. I think it's a great session, Shalu and Naveen and Fatima. Fatima, would like to conclude this session?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much once again. And what's been interesting is that I was just looking at the questions. Shalu, Naveen, I don't know if you can see, but there are hundreds of these questions that are coming up. So I'm assuming that this session has been informative as well. I just want to thank both of you because I think we've managed to discuss, the sort of changes that are taking place, and also the fact that you both work on yourselves, and you do seem to, have this fundamental I would say optimism also in terms of how one can really make the most of these opportunities. And I think that's very important for entrepreneurs and especially people who are going to be going through a lot of disruption to see. So thank you very much. And Tushar, thank you very much for enabling this. And I just want to thank a great audience, some of which actually got through in terms of the questions.
Thank you so much, Fatima and Karan, and thank you to all the people who joined us today. And I just like to say to all of you that, I think the worst is behind us, and we have to be, optimistic about the future. So please look after yourselves, take care of all the precautions, all the safety precautions. And I'm sure things are going to open up. And we're going to have new opportunities for us. And under the new paradigm and under the new circumstances, I'm sure we are going to succeed, and all of us together as humanity, we're going to come out stronger. So thank you so much, and wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you,
everyone. Thank you. To get more updates about workplace trends, please follow our LinkedIn and Facebook. You will get all the videos of this session and all the previous videos. This is the 7th episode which we have done, and thank you everyone for attending this session. Naveen and Shalu and Fatima, thank you very much. Thank you.